Do you ever feel like no matter what you do, it feels impossible to get ahead? Okay, if you are in that place right now, what is happening is you have an undercover success block standing in between where you are now and where you want to go. So I've introduced this video series. This is video 3 of 6. Originally, it was going to be 5, but there was another one that I had to add in and talk about because I want to show you the undercover success blocks that are standing in your way right now, holding you back from getting you where you want to go. Because I've seen a lot of women not realize that it is these simple things that we are doing that it is blocking us. So I want to help you get ahead of this. And in today's video, what we're going to talk about is one of the most challenging blocks to overcome. And this is something that so many of us perceive as a good thing. And this is, we have the best interest at heart when we set out with this in mind, and that is being perfect. So do you subscribe to perfectionism? If so, hi, my name is Elise. I'm a recovering perfectionist, and this is where I've spent many years of my life suffering and getting in my own way. And for so many of us, we don't realize that perfectionism is actually not helpful. Instead, we subscribe to the idea that if we are perfect, then we will be liked, we will be loved, we'll be accepted, we'll be successful, we'll have all the things we ever want in our life because everything is perfect, right? But that's not how it works. I wish it was the case, because if so, all of those years that I dedicated to being perfect would have really served me. But they actually held me back. And I'm guessing if you were in a place where perfectionism is something that is very true to you, it is your normal way of operating, that it is presenting some challenges in your life right now. So let's uncover why perfectionism is a success block. So at the core of it, when we set out, we never go into perfection as something as a bad thing, right? We just want things to be good. We want to do our best work. We want to make sure everything's done right. We love to have things perfect, but it really slows us down and costs a lot of time. The reason why this can really be a block is because when we get into the act of making sure everything is perfect, what we end up doing is setting the bar so high for ourselves that it makes it virtually impossible to live up to. And when we get into that space, when we feel like we can never live up to our own standards, we're constantly in our head, overthinking, beating ourselves up, getting into this place where it's like, oh, it wasn't good enough, and then having to redo work, which is costing us time. And that's only holding us back from getting to the next level faster. So I find for so many of us, we enter what I like to call the perfectionist spiral. So let me pull over my whiteboard because I want to show you what this perfection spiral actually looks like. Because at the core of it all, our intention is really just trying to feel good enough, right? So if we do these things, everything's going to work out. We're going to be successful. We're going to be good enough, blah, 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 right? It's like we have this agenda of things in mind that perfection is going to guarantee us. So what ends up happening is we do these things in order to really protect ourselves, because at the core of it all, perfectionism is a protection mechanism. This is what nobody talks about when it comes to perfectionism. This is really how we keep ourselves safe. So when we enter the spiral, what ends up happening is we set out to do something. And as we set out on this, we find this urge, and it's like an itch that we want to scratch, right? Where we feel the need to have it be perfect. And underneath that urge, it's just because some part of us is looking for that protection. We're feeling unsafe and we're feeling out of control. And we feel if it's perfect, that then we will feel safe and we will feel back in control. Now, when we usually go to the next step, we start overthinking everything. So, is this good enough? Oh my God, is it right? What are they going to think? And we start really getting in our heads. And that overthinking just goes from level 1 to 100. And we're constantly just obsessing about every single detail, making sure it's perfect. And when we're doing that, it creates a lot of confusion and doubt, which is a perfectionist nightmare because you don't want to feel doubt. You don't want to feel confused. You want to feel perfect. And feeling doubtful and confused is anything other than perfect. So then when we get into that mode, we're creating an immense amount of anxiety in our body. And when we're feeling the anxiety, we start to panic. So guess what we do more of? Perfecting, because this is a way to start creating that safety for ourselves. So we're looking once again for protection. And at the core of it all, when we're putting up the armor of perfection, it's because we feel some part of us feels unsafe. So once again, we're scratching that itch, we're giving more perfection. Then, this is a really sticky one, right? We feel that imposter syndrome coming up. All the what ifs start of, oh God, what are they going to think about me? What if they do think this about me? What if they judge me? What if they don't like me? What if they think I'm stupid? What if I put this out there and it doesn't work? What if I fail? What if I get rejected, right? Now, all of a sudden, imposter syndrome has just become our truth. So guess what we do more of? More overworking. Because if we overwork and just continue to perfect, what it's going to do is put us back into control. But it's giving us anything other than control. Because what ends up happening is we just go back into scratching the urge of more perfectionism. So this cycle ends up becoming our daily reality for so many of us. And I find the bigger you have the desire to achieve, to create success, to really perform at the level in which you know you are capable of, the more true this is for so many of us. So what I want to do is help you get ahead of this, because if we know now that perfectionism is only a tool to help protect us and help us feel safe, then let's talk about what is it that perfectionism is actually keeping us safe from? So if you had to really get honest with yourself, is it keeping you safe from feeling a feeling, right? Is it a fear of failure? Because I find for so many of us, perfection and the fear of failure go hand in hand. Also vulnerability. If we're perfect, we're never going to have to feel vulnerable, right? So is that what is reigning true for you and what drives you back into the spiral of perfectionism? Because if we don't understand this, what we're always going to be in the pattern of is only feeling good enough when we feel perfect, when we're winning. And if we're not winning, then we're losing. And we're going to make those losses mean horrible things about us, which will keep us actually doing the thing that we want to do in our life, because we're going to be so fearful of failing. We're going to make it mean horrible, nasty things about ourselves if we do fail. Just we're going to think there's no recovery. And that fear and that pain is going to feel so strong that will just keep us back into the spiral of perfection, right? It's called all or nothing thinking, right? It's like, I'm only winning. If I'm not winning, I'm losing and I'm destined to fail forever, right? It's our brain can be so dramatic sometimes. So we also get into the spiral of perfectionism, and this is what's really robbing us of living up to our true potential, because we have such unrealistic expectations of how our life should be, how it should look, how it should feel, how our work should be, how we should look as people, right? So we get into this space of, if every detail in life isn't perfect, then I'm just not going to show up at all. And then we hide. So when we get trapped in this spiral and we have this deep fear of failure and we have this deep fear of vulnerability, we think that if we get everything perfect, then we're never going to have to experience those things. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I know I lived for so many years of my life and I still failed. People still disliked me. People still called me ugly. People still criticized my work. People still told me I wasn't good enough. I still had rejections, right? Like, even though I tried to perfect every single detail of my life, I still had moments where I fell flat on my face and I had to pick myself back up and lick my wounds and rebuild myself, because I really thought for so many years that if I just had it perfect, that I wouldn't have to go through any of those things. But that's not life. And as much as we try to escape this reality and protect ourselves by being perfect, it doesn't make us immune to what life has planned for us, right? So when we get into this space and we have this core belief that we need to be perfect in order to feel good enough, what ends up happening is we're always going to end up doing more, thinking we need to be more. And at the end of the day, we're going to find ourselves completely and utterly exhausted, because we are on this never-ending quest to prove ourselves and show this world why we are good enough via perfectionism, right? And this goes down to literally, like I said, having the perfect Instagram caption, making sure every single presentation is perfect to where you're staying at work extra hours working on this presentation, moving this picture over to the left and to the right, and making sure this copy, oh God, should I be using the, or should it be and, or what word? Should this be a period? Should it be a question mark, right? Like, we're literally obsessing about every single detail. So we think to ourselves, the more that I work, the more that I think about this, the more perfect I can make it. And we think that that's a way to gain control. But in doing that, what it's really putting distance in between is doing the work to actually feel good enough, and doing the work to help ourselves decide to overcome this way of thinking and looking at life, and looking at what needs to happen to actually feel safe, right? Because at the core of it all, we're looking at perfection as a protection mechanism to just keep you safe. And this is truly nothing more than a way of operating that is going to waste time and very precious energy. So we think to ourselves, okay, if I get it perfect, then once again, no one's going to judge me. I'm not going to get it wrong. I won't look stupid. I won't fail. I won't get rejected. I'm not going to be hurt. I'm not going to be disliked. And we bury ourselves under these thick, 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 thick layers of perfection, right? And I used to think that me doing that was a gift, just a gift that was going to guarantee that I was loved and I was accepted and I was going to be successful and everybody was going to think I'm so smart and that I had it all together. But no matter how hard I tried, there was no amount of perfection that was ever good enough in my mind. I could never ever live up to this unrealistic standard that I had set for myself. So I was always punishing myself and yelling at myself in my mind and saying the nastiest things to myself because I could not believe that once again, I just failed. I couldn't even live up to my own standard. How could I ever live up to anybody else's of me? So I was constantly failing in my own mind every single day. And I felt deeply flawed. I was staying at work over 100 hours a week at times because once again, I thought if I just worked harder and I did more, that I could just prove myself. And I was so exhausted living in the spiral. And I knew, like, there was a part of me that was like, I know there has to be another way. Like, this can't be it. Like, I can't be living in this place of just, I just felt so fragile all the time. And at any given moment, I was going to break because I was, an imposter at the core of it all. And someone was going to find me out. They were going to know I wasn't perfect. So I had to work so hard to keep it all together. And I found that my first place of really starting to understand where this all came from was looking at, why do I feel the need to be so perfect in the first place? Like, where did this come from? Because do I really need to be this perfect? And then I started thinking about, who am I without perfectionism? Who am I as an imperfect person? And then automatically I was like, not good enough. I can't be imperfect. But all of us are imperfect beings. And if you find yourself in this place, I want you to read the book, The Gifts of Imperfection by my queen, Brene Brown. She is just magical when it comes to showing us that every single person on this earth as a human being is imperfect. And the more that you can start realizing that imperfection is a part of the human experience, the more you start to just see imperfection as normal and see that your genius lives in the spaces of imperfection. And for somebody, if you would have told me a few years ago, as somebody who lives their whole entire life as a perfectionist, I'd be like, wrong. I reject that. It is perfection is the only option because failure is not an option. I just instantly would have rejected it. But now being on the other side of multiple years of doing this work on myself, I know every single one of us, not one of us has it all together. Not one of us has all the answers. We are all flawed individuals, and our flaws are our gifts, and our imperfections is our beauty. So I want you just to start thinking about, could it be possible that some of your biggest flaws and your biggest imperfections are actually your biggest and most genius gifts? Because they are. And it's usually the things that we deny most about ourselves that is the things that make us absolutely perfect. So I started looking at, okay, so if my whole focus is living a perfect life, right? Like when I started my personal development journey back in 2017, I made this the focus of like, why do I need everything in my life to be so perfect? Because nothing was ever good enough for me. Like down to the food at restaurants, I'd be like, send this back to the kitchen. I was totally that girl. It awful, like just awful way of operating. Nothing was ever good enough for me. So I had to gain the understanding of why I wanted to be perfect in the first place. And it truly came down to two things. And I encourage you, if you are a perfectionist, trace it back. Where did this behavior start for you? Did somebody in your life hand you this belief that you need to be perfect in order to be liked, accepted, succeed, whatever it might be? So for me, what I realized is growing up, I was surrounded by teachings that in order to truly be seen as good enough and to ensure that I don't fail, that I need to look a certain way, that I need to behave a certain way and project perfection, or else I would not be seen as good enough and I would ultimately fail in life. So in order to truly succeed and be accepted and be good enough, I had to be perfect. Can you imagine as a child the amount of pressure that I put on myself? No wonder why I had such a deep desire to achieve, because I received praise through achievement. So the more I achieved, the more perfect I was, the more praise I got. So my brain was wired as a child to see, okay, if I do this, I get praise. So do more of this, I get more praise, right? So that was the ultimate validation for me. And I was always seeking validation from the outside because I was never trained how to give that to myself from the inside. For me, it was always an outside job, right? If I did this, you told me I did a good job, that means I'm good enough. I didn't know how to offer that to myself. The second part of it was when I was going to school, I was bullied really bad as a kid. I mean, really, really bad, like punched in the face, dog shit rubbed on my face, like nasty, nasty, nasty all the time. Like that went on from kindergarten through 11th grade. It was my daily reality. I truly founded my whole entire belief about myself upon what the bullies told me about myself. So I wasn't good enough. I was stupid. I was fat. I was ugly. And I was never going to be anything in my life. So you better believe I had a mission to prove all of these stupid people wrong, right? And I moved to LA on that mission, determined to show them why they were all wrong. And that created such an unhealthy relationship with, if I get it perfect and I prove these people wrong, then I'm going to be successful and then I'll be good enough in life, right? So I was always putting my achievement as the source of my self-esteem. But guess what happens when I wasn't achieving? I felt terrible about myself. And I was always putting conditions upon my sense of worthiness, my love for myself, being good enough. It was always based on something outside of me. And that is a very dangerous relationship to get into. And no wonder why I ended up working in the beauty industry for 15 years, because I had a deep desire to be perfect. And what do we do in beauty, right? It's like I'm sitting here with my makeup done perfectly right now. It's still something I love to do, but it's no longer because I feel like I have to. But at that point, I did. It was my only way to show up. I wouldn't even go to Target without makeup on because God forbid somebody saw me without my mask on. So I went into this mindset of perfection is the only option. Don't show up if you're imperfect. And this was such deep conditioning for me to unwind. And I see so many women arrive at this place because, once again, no coincidence. As little girls, we are taught that the more perfect we are, the better we are. So be perfect, you're better, right? And we get a lot of praise and validation from that. And if we aren't perfect, that means that we are less than, which tricks us into falling for this lie that we're not good enough. So we're constantly living in the spiral of trying to prove that we are good enough by being perfect. Do you see how this is a success block? Do you see how this could be potentially standing in your way right now of being where you want to be in life and truly loving yourself exactly as you are, flaws, imperfections, and all, right? Because once we get into this perfectionist spiral, we enter the cycle that I call the not enoughness cycle. No matter what we do in our life, it's never going to be enough. No matter how good we look, it's never going to be enough. No matter how much weight we lose, it's never going to be enough. No matter how much money we make, it's never going to be enough. And when you lack enoughness, and you lack the ability to see how to create these things from the inside out versus the outside in, right? You need these certain things to happen in order to feel certain ways. You're always going to be in that place where you're living in that lack-based cycle of not enoughness. So we can work 100+ hour weeks just like I used to, and your brain is still going to tell you not enough. Answer that email when you get home. Wake up at midnight and answer that email. You can spend an hour getting ready in the morning, and your brain is still going to think when you look in the mirror, not good enough. Oh my God, did you see that wrinkle? Did you see that pimple? Oh God, go get some more Botox or whatever. Like the horrible, nasty things that our brains say. You can spend hours at the gym running your booty off, completely sweat, tomato face red, just completely panting. And your brain's gonna be like, should have done more, 5 more minutes, should have done more reps, right? Like your brain is always going to offer you these type of thoughts until you start creating a mindset that is not based on having to be perfect. Perfectionists at the core of it all are truly wired to burn out. And this is why I see this burnout epidemic going, because we are never seeing this. We're on this never ending quest that no matter what we do, it's never good enough. And we are killing ourselves making every single detail of our life perfect because our brain tells us, not good enough, do more. Our brain goes into this idea of, oh, never settle for less, push harder, right? Our brain goes into looking at, oh, what is she doing over there? You got to be better than her. We go into thinking, oh, I want to be more successful. Okay, stay later, right? There's never enough. And I think about, if you all saw the Barbie movie, there was a point in the movie, and don't worry, this won't spoil it for you, but where America Ferrera, towards the end of the movie, goes on the most passionate rant of what it's like to be a woman in today's world. And it makes me emotional just thinking about it. I was bawling like a little bitch at this scene of the movie because I'm like, yes, finally somebody said it. Because we're not good enough moms, we're not good enough wives, we're not good enough friends, we're not good enough daughters, we're not good enough sisters, we're not good enough employees. Like we're never good enough. We are wired to burn out because it's never enough. And I find that for perfectionists, I'm gonna give you something that is going to make you want to throw up a little bit. The reason why we get into this place is because we are taught that it is never good enough and good enough is not good enough, right? So the way that you start shifting out of this is to start seeing good enough as good enough, and only you can decide what good enough is. So if you are in a place right now where you are killing yourself, what is enough? When is it ever going to be enough for you? Because at some point you have to decide that for yourself, because if not, you're going to be constantly chasing this ever moving target and setting yourself up for immense failure. And right now you're just trying to protect yourself from failure, but in actuality, you're causing it because this is not sustainable. This is not a sustainable way of living. And I find that perfectionists are amazing at doing two things that are on this board, and that is overthinking and overworking. We are so good at that, right? It's a way of just really making ourselves feel safe. And we think to ourselves that these actions are making us seem so much more committed and dedicated. And it just proves that we are so willing to go above and beyond and do whatever it takes to succeed. We think to ourselves, that failure is just not an option. And the only way to make sure that we don't fail is to do this every day. So we just think the more committed we are, the more we should be thinking about this, the more we should be doing. And we overwork and overthink. And this is our guarantee ticket towards burnout. And this is why perfectionists are wired to burn out. So this level of overthinking, overworking, it's not sustainable because you never turn off and then your battery dies. So if you want to overcome this identity, first and foremost, you and I need to start working together today because I will show you I'm the right person to lead you down this path. Because let me tell you, my friend, I've invested so many years of my life into figuring out how to stop living as a perfectionist and what to do when these perfectionistic urges come up, right? We have to have new coping mechanisms to help you feel safe in order to ensure that you are not living in this perfectionist spiral every single day. So if you need that support, please send me a message or visit soulmakeup.com. You can book a 1 hour strategy session with me just so we can talk about what this even looks like and the impact that perfectionism is taking and causing you and what it's costing you and what needs to happen to overcome this. So that's step one. Step two is I want you to really get honest with yourself about what is perfectionism protecting you from and who are you still trying to be perfect for? Is it your mom? Is it your dad? Is it your partner? Is it your boss? Is it yourself? Who are you trying to be perfect for? Is it your kids, your friends? Why? Why? And why are you still trying to be perfect for them? And is perfection still serving you? So, the last thing, if you really want to start overcoming this, and once again, as a recovering perfectionist, I remember someone telling me this and I wanted to just chew it up and spit it right back out at them, is to really start adopting good enough is good enough. We've got to focus on progress, not perfection. You've got to get it done. You've got to take the messy action. And if you don't get started, you're never going to arrive at your destination. So don't let perfectionism be what keeps you from getting started because it's never going to be perfect enough until you decide that it is. And by just deciding it's good enough now, it's only going to get better. It's only going to improve. I'm only going to grow more. I'm only going to learn more. I'm only going to get better, right? Until you start adopting that mindset, you're going to be on the starting line every single time. And if you think about what, when anybody sets out to do anything, imperfect is what creates genius. It is in those moments of imperfection that the most remarkable creations in this world come. And I think about being a product developer. I've developed thousands of products in my lifetime. I've now developed thousands of women and their mindset. No remarkable thing ever came from trying to get it perfect. It was like, oh my God, we screwed that up so bad. Here's what we learned from it. Here's how to make it better. And I think about all the products that I went out to develop. Nothing was ever perfect. And sometimes our most successful multi-million dollar products came from failure. There was one product that I ended up developing that did something horrible in testing and it ended up being so genius. We put a spin on it and ended up getting this product in the door of every single target, which was huge. That did not happen in this category ever. And it was because of failure. So what if failure, what you're working so hard to protect yourself from, is your biggest vehicle to success? Because it is. Failure is nothing more than feedback that informs your next best success. But if you are so committed to perfection, you're never going to allow yourself to fail and learn and grow. And if you think about it, like let's use an author, for example, an author who set out or write a best-selling book on the New York Times bestseller list is going to create so much pressure for themselves that they're going to rob themselves from experiencing their genius. Like, do you think when Taylor Swift goes out to write a song that she's like, this is going to be a #1 hit? Like I've literally seen her talk in interviews about the songs that she least expected to be the hits ended up being the hits. It was just something she had on her heart. She had to get it out. She wrote it. It was genius. She didn't have any attachment to perfection. And then all of a sudden here we are with #1 hit, right? I find this also to be true with my own content. Every time I try to write the most perfect post, I watch people run away. I get no engagement, no likes, no anything. It doesn't help anybody. But when I have something on my heart and there's misspelling and there's typos in it and it's just messy because I just had to get it out of my brain and to you because I knew it was going to help you, that is where genius happens. That is where I see women literally shifting from reading 3 paragraphs of sentences that came from my mind, right? And I think of, once again, some of the most genius products that I ever developed. It started off as this messy idea in my brain, and now it's on the shelves of Sephora making millions and millions of dollars for the brands that I used to work for. Did it start off perfect? No, it started off messy, but it became perfect in the act of actually doing and bringing it forward into reality. So I want you to think about being in a space where you are allowing the little spaces of imperfection and these little messy moments of life to surprise you, because this is where the remarkable moments live. But if you are so committed to being in this perfectionist bubble to protect yourself, you're never going to get to experience the beauty that life has to offer you in this way. And this will always hold you back of creating your most successful life and living up to your full potential, because you'll be sitting back, overthinking in your head, watching life pass you by, not, being present for the moments, because you're gonna be like, oh my God, I should have done this better. You'll be living in shoulda, coulda, woulda land. And that robs you of the most rewarding life experience. So if you are blocked right now and you are not creating the success you desire, is it because we are so committed to being perfect? Really something valuable to think about today. Okay. If you love this, I will be back on Friday for a training. I call it the SPF formula. This is one of my signature growth formulas. I know, working in the beauty industry, I have all sorts of beauty names. So SPF in my past life used to stand for sun protection factor. In this form of my life, it stands for success, perfection, and failure. So I'm going to be training you on Friday to talk all about this specific formula and how it is actually helping you create your most successful life. So you definitely want to get in on this. I will have this video live for you on Friday. Come back, check in on that, because I want you to get fully trained on how to start using this formula to create your most successful life. Okay, I hope this has been helpful. Please let me know if you have any follow-up questions. My inbox is always open for you. And let's just commit to reading The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown and starting to learn how to lead our most beautifully imperfect life.